we are looking at this big idea of being on a staycation, that even though we might take a vacation, which is right, and as we should, we want to take our vacation time and enjoy the summer months and so forth, but we never want to take a vacation from our walk with Jesus. That we want to stay on the path, that we want to stay in God's plans for our life. And one of the ways I think that we do that is by the words of Psalm 27, where David, he writes this. He says, the one thing, somebody say one thing, put it in the chat, one thing. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. That this is more than just a physical location that I want to be in that place, but it's also a mindset. It's a heart. It's a pursuit. It's what are you living for? That the one thing that I want above anything and everything else is to be in the presence of Jesus. That I want to be at home with him. I want to pursue after that. But how many know that life be lifing, and that there are opportunities and there are moments where that one thing is distracted, that one thing is hindered, that one thing is challenged, where all of a sudden this one thing is now taking a back seat because all the other pressures of life or the circumstances of our life have now become the driver of that one thing. And so the question for us on the table today is, how do we manage? How do we respond? How do we keep making the one thing, the main thing that we are pursuing after? I'm glad you asked. So go ahead and pull out your phones, your devices, whatever it might be that you had to take notes, because note takers are history makers, note takers are world changers, and I believe that here in this room we have some world changers, and so we want to take notes, and because I believe that God has a word for you today. How many know that when you go on vacation, there's always one thing that you want to accomplish? There's always one thing on your mind. For some in this room, your one thing is, all I want to do on this vacation is sit by the poolside, order lunch, and have somebody bring it to me. How many people are in the room are like that? Yeah. Or there's the other side of the crowd. Your one thing is, I just want to sit on the beach, hear the waves come crashing in, do absolutely nothing other than get a sunburn, in which I will complain about the rest of the vacation time. There's others in the room that your one thing is like, I want to go on this trip, and because somebody found out where you were going, they said, oh, you got to try this restaurant. And so your one thing is, we just have to eat at that restaurant. If you're wondering, no, it's not Popeyes, it's Chick-fil-A. That's always the answer. But it's that one thing that you just want to go and do. Or maybe for your one thing is, I just want to sleep. I want to rest. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want any phone calls, text messages, or emails. Just leave me alone. I just want that one thing. Or maybe for others in the room, your one thing is to hit up that golf course, or to read a book, to go to that coffee shop and read a book. There's others in the house that your one thing is, you just want to go on vacation and everybody come back alive. That you want all the kids to make it their way home. You want them to not fight, argue, complain, gripe about because they're not getting to sit here, or they're touching me, they're crossing the line. The one thing is just peace and quiet. And unfortunately, you didn't name any of your kids peace and quiet. But it's still the one thing. You go on your honeymoon, there's one thing on your mind. Well, what's that? Ask your mom. There's one thing on your mind. But how many know that sometimes that one thing can be interrupted? Or what about this as well? You get to the end of vacation and you're on your way home. There's one thing on your mind. Do we have to go back home? Can't we stay longer? Or how about those trips that you get back home and a friend or somebody asks, hey, so how was it? And because of the circumstances surrounding the trip, flight delays, flight cancellations, car issues, car troubles, food poisoning, whatever it might be, your only response is, well, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I remember there's one year that we were visiting Christy's family. We were in Kentucky and visiting the in-laws for an entire week at Thanksgiving time. And how many know that when you're at your in-laws for an entire week, you have one thing on your mind? When do we go home? Now, I have great in-laws. They're amazing people, and I enjoy being there all week long. Still wanted to go home, though. And I remember this one particular trip where they're all week long, and so on Sunday morning we get up and we're heading back home. And at the time, we had just the three boys, and they were younger, and they did not travel well at all. And so we're on this trip, and we're about 3-4 hours into the trip, and you could tell that they were done. And I knew this because as we were driving, Braden had decided to take off his shoe and chuck it at the front windshield, because we were not paying attention to his needs at that time. He was not getting his juice box or his goldfish in enough time. He was being impatient. So so we knew, all right, we got to take a break. Let's pull over, and we stop, do the potty break, do that whole thing, whatever. We get back out on the road, and as soon as we start back out on the road, and we're going through this small little town, the van starts making all the clinking, clacking, all the noises that you're like, oh no, here we go. And so the van just shuts down. We pull over. We manage to get out and out of the way. And so I'm out. Now, I'm not a car guy, so I don't know really what I'm doing, but I'm the dad. I'm supposed to look like know what I'm doing. And so I get out, and I pop the hood, and I open it up, and I'm standing there. And no lie, literally, it starts pouring down raining. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. So now it's raining. I'm looking at this engine. I'm like, there's an engine. I have no idea what's going on now. I got my son, Drew. He's over there on the side passenger now. He's like, Dad, do you know what you're doing? I don't. Shut up. Sit down. And so it's like, oh my goodness. And all of a sudden I start seeing these parts. I see this like belt that's just dangling off the side somewhere. And I'm like, well, that's probably not good. Maybe that's it. I don't know. And so I call AAA. They get out, and they're like, well, it's going to be about 3-4 hours before we can get to you. Fantastic, because now we're in a small little Kentucky town. It's a Sunday afternoon. All the shops, all the places are closed down except for one little sketchy restaurant. We're like, why not? And so we go over there and pray that we don't get food poisoning. And so we're there with 3 little boys stuck in this restaurant, this sketchy little place, and hoping that AAA finally gets there. Well, they get there, and they're like, well, here's the deal. The only shop that's open is back in Paducah, which is an hour backwards of where we just came from. I'm like, this is fantastic. Just what I wanted. To extend this vacation time even longer, for us to stay in a small hotel room with 3 little boys with no devices, nothing to do, because what could go wrong? And so we wait for the AAA. He drives us all the way back, and so we get checked in on Sunday night, and we're there Monday morning, call into the shop. Yeah, so here's the good news. We can get you the part, but it'll be here Tuesday afternoon. Fantastic. I was hoping for that. And so we finally get the part in Tuesday afternoon. And so on Wednesday morning, we're back on the road, whatever. But how many know that life can be like that sometimes? That you're expecting the trip to go one way, but what you got was something completely different. That you did not ask for, you did not anticipate, you did not desire, you did not want, and yet you got. And now you're left with this question, or this statement, if you will. It's not what I thought it was going to be like. When we come to Acts chapter 16, we see 2 gentlemen, Paul and Silas, 2 missionaries on a journey that God had assigned for them. That along the journey that they will experience time and time again, these unexpected, unanticipated moments that left them thinking, it's not what I thought it was going to be like. Let's look at it in Acts chapter 16, starting in verse 9. It says, that night Paul had a vision. A man from Macedonia in northern Greece was standing there, pleading with him, come over to Macedonia and help us. So we decided to leave for Macedonia at once, having concluded that God was calling us to preach the good news there. It goes on to verse 16. One day, as we were going down to the place of prayer, so they had made their arrival, they were there in the town, and one day as we were going down to the place of prayer, we met a slave girl who had a spirit that enabled her to tell the future. She earned a lot of money for her masters by telling fortunes. And she followed Paul and the rest of us, shouting, these men are servants of the Most High God, and they have come to tell you how to be saved. Now, in this moment, you would think, oh, great. She's helping them go viral. She's helping proclaim their news. She's sharing their posts. She's liking. She's commenting. She's doing all the things. But no, that's not really what's taking place here. As it goes on to say, it goes, this went on day after day until Paul got so exasperated that he turned and said to the demon within her, I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her, and instantly it left her. What's going on? Well, Paul understood that this nuisance was beyond just this woman herself, but there was something deeper at work. You see, this reference of the spirit that was within her that Paul had cast out, this spirit in the Greek is referred to as Python Apollos. And this Python spirit was this pagan god, if you will, where people would go to this individual, this person that would display this so-called gift, and they would be able to tell the future. They would tell their fortune. And so if somebody had something stolen from them, a person would go to this individual and ask, who do I blame? Who do I charge? Who took my stuff? Who took my goat? Who took my lamb? Who took my sheep? Who took my stuff? Or if you had lost something, you would go to this person and then they would help you, supposedly help you find it. Or the most common response was future telling. And so they would go to this person. Now, when you think of that name, though, Python, it's interesting because I think of another demonic animal, the snake, right? It's the one animal that the one animal that Noah could have left off the ark. Like he could have been like, my bad, God, but he ain't coming. Nonetheless, pythons live. And so the way that pythons work, if you don't know, a python will wait in hiding and wait for its prey to come within striking distance. And then the python will reach out, strike the prey, bite it, but that's not the bite that kills the animal. It will hold it in its place. And then what will happen is the python will wrap its body around the prey, and in that moment, it will start using its force and its strength to apply pressure. And in that pressure, it will start suffocating the prey. But again, that's not what kills the prey. What kills the prey is this, that after the suffocation, it leads to cardiac arrest in the animal. Very similar, how many know that we also have an enemy that wants to seek out to suffocate that in which God has placed within us? That we step out in faith, we respond to the salvation call, that we give our lives to Christ, or God speaks to us about stepping out in faith and giving and serving, or whatever it might be, and then immediately we start feeling the attack of the enemy, because inevitably what will happen is when you step out in faith, it's going to disrupt the culture or the world around you, and because of that disruption, the enemy is not going to like it, and so what is he going to do? He's going to wait and ambush and then try to get a hold of you and suffocate the life and the faith and the belief that God is the God of the possible, that God is the one that called you and purposed you. He wants to suffocate those dreams and that faith within your heart to keep you and to limit you from God accomplishing all that he's called you to accomplish. Paul understood this reality. We know this to be true. We make a commitment that, hey, we're going to start going to church on a regular basis. We're going to make it our New Year's resolution that this year, every Sunday, I'm there. And then what happens? Your boss changes your work schedule to now you're working on Sunday mornings. You finally make a commitment to joining a serve team. And then that morning that you're supposed to show up for your shadow serve time, all of a sudden, sick kids, car breaks down, you get called into work, spirit of Python. Or maybe for you, you start tithing, but instead of seeing God's blessings, you see a car repair, you see a car breakdown, you see an unexpected and unnecessary hospital bill. That you step out in faith, and that's when you see the attacks of the enemy. Or maybe you make the decision to, you know what, I'm going to start living, loving, and looking more like Jesus. I'm going to change, and I'm going to be a different person. And all of a sudden, it's the former friends that are calling you back to what you guys used to do. It's the gossiping friends that want to keep conflict going. Or maybe it's the past temptations that you thought that you had overcome and that you were over, and yet it's the temptations that are calling you back, saying, come back home. And they come back with a vengeance. It's the spirit of Python. It's the spirit of Python that wants to suffocate that in which God has placed in your heart. But for Paul, he understood that there was a greater reality that was taking place, that he was not going to allow this suffocation to wipe out that in which God had called them to do. And the first thing that we had to recognize, that if we're going to stay on the staycation of God's plan for our life, we had to anchor our calling to Jesus. We have to anchor our calling to Jesus. Because if we don't anchor our calling to something, we will drift unexpectedly away from, not to. And so we have to anchor our calling to Jesus. Paul recognized this. Well, as you can imagine, this did not go well for the slave owners. They lost their source of income, but not only their income, but they were also losing their influence with the men of the region for being exposed for being a fraud. Look at it in Acts 16, verse 22. A mob quickly formed against Paul and Silas, and the city officials ordered them stripped and beaten with wooden rods. And they were severely beaten, and then they were thrown into prison. The jailer was ordered to make sure they did not escape. So the jailer put them into the inner dungeon and clamped their feet in the stocks. Now, when we think of dungeons, we obviously don't think about present-day prisons. Obviously, back at this time, the prison, if you will, or the dungeons, look completely different than what people would experience even today. We got a picture right up here that this is what it would look like. Now, over here on the left, it's a tourist attraction. So, no, they did not have a sky view while they were waiting in prison. They did not have the warm breeze coming through. No, this is just an opening that has been established so you can see inside. But the reality is, these dungeons, they were dark, they were cold, they were wet, they were inhumane, that they were overcrowded, that these dungeons, they did not have any type of drainage system, so their toilets would be in the corner of the space. That the guys or the men that would be in these dungeons, they would not be served food. Family, friends, a sympathetic guard, if they brought them food, then they obviously had food. But if nobody brought them anything, then they simply starved. Paul and Silas, this is what they had to deal with. In fact, because of the fact that they were in the inner dungeon, it was just one step worse that they had to face. In fact, Paul, he would later on write about this experience, and he would say that we were crushed and overwhelmed by our ability to endure. In fact, we expected to die. We did not expect to make it. There's some in this room today that if you were honest with me, you would say that you feel a little bit like that. No, you're not in prison. No, you're not in the dungeon, if you will. But because of life circumstances, external, internal, that maybe for you, you feel like you're in this inner dungeon, if you will. That you've stepped out in faith, and yet you feel like the suffocation is crushing the life out of you. You feel like you're overwhelmed. You feel crushed. You feel like, how in the world do I keep enduring through this? This is not at all what I thought life was going to be like. You get married, you have all these hopes and dreams, and yet you find yourself where the marriage is on the rocks. You've been on the struggle bus for some time. Ongoing conflict, choices that have impacted the marriage. Or maybe for you, the vows that were once till death do us part are now divorce and bitterness. You landed what you thought was going to be the dream job, and yet there's conflict at work. The pay isn't covering the expenses that you thought they were going to cover. That it's not quite what you thought it was going to be. That it's more stressful and anxiety-driven than you would have anticipated. For others, maybe you missed out on the dream job. And now you're asking, well, what now? I thought I was a shoo-in. I thought this is it. It's not it. Or maybe for you that you believed in God's healing for a loved one, and yet their healing came in the form of going with Jesus, being united with Jesus in death. Or maybe for some in this room, you had dreams of raising a little boy or girl, and yet you're experiencing the grief of miscarriage. Others in the room, you're facing hardship, financial hardship. Everything was going great in life. Everything was going fine until the doctor's report gave you the news that you have a life-altering sickness. Or maybe for some, you feel like you've been doing all the right things. You feel like you've been checking all the right boxes, that you've praying, worshiping, you're attending church, you're serving, you're giving, you're doing all the right things. And yet you still feel like on the inside there's an inner dungeon of defeat. And so then we start asking questions like, God, what's up? Where are you? Where'd you go? What did I do to deserve this? God, what in the world is happening? Like, why are you allowing this? How many more bills can I collect? How many more breakdowns can I have? God, what in the world is going on? But one of the things that I have discovered in my life through all the painful seasons, the challenges and the struggles, that God does not always have to be predictable to be dependable. That my circumstances does not change who he is. That my circumstances don't dictate what he's able to do. That my circumstances don't change the reality that, yes, it might not be what I thought it was going to be like, but I can still count on this one thing, that God is still good and he does good. That we can still look to him and see that he is still faithful. This is Paul and Silas's mindset. That in Acts 16:25, it says this: around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. Around midnight, when it was the most darkest, when it was the coldest, when it was the deepest part of the struggle internally, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. But what we do in this midnight hour is not sing and pray. No, we complain and gripe, right? God, I can't do this anymore. What is happening? God, what in the world? And we give into those moments and we want to focus on the problem. And yeah, Paul and Silas, they said, you know what? I'm going to take my eyes off of the problem and I'm going to take it to the one that can deal with the problem. And so they are praying and they are singing hymns to God. Can I suggest that there is something powerful that happens when we sing? See, for Paul and Silas, they weren't dismissing what they were going through. They weren't being passive aggressive. What they were actually doing was they were recalibrating and reframing their emotions and their mindset and seeing that the prison, the dungeon, it was not a curse, but it was going to be a catalyst to trusting and believing God on a deeper level. That they were using the prison as a catalyst for what God could do and what he would do. See, to stay in the staycation of God's plan for our life, we have to learn to sing in the midnight hour. We have to learn to sing in the midst of our challenges. We have to learn to sing in the deepest parts of the struggle and the challenges that we are walking through. There's something powerful that happens when we sing. A counselor once said, singing can serve as a hard reset for your emotional state, and it has a powerful effect on your processing of memory, decision-making, and emotional responses. Because normally, you only sing when you are safe. Though you might feel overwhelmed, when you are in God's love, you are safe. So sing and enjoy his sunshine on your face. In other words, the brightness of your worship will only be based on how much sunshine you let in. Don't let your present challenges sing louder than your praise to a heavenly Father that does not change who he is based on our circumstances. Don't let your current struggles sing louder than your trust and your faith in God. In Psalm 59, it says this, the writer in a season of struggle, yet he says, as for me, I will sing of the Lord's mighty strength and power. Yes, I will sing joyfully of his loving kindness in the morning, for he has been my stronghold and a refuge in the day of my distress. Can I suggest that sometimes in our lives, sometimes in these moments of chaos and defeat, that we have to preach to ourselves. We have to preach to our souls. We have to tell ourselves, you know what? You may not feel like it. No, the circumstances aren't great. No, I don't feel like praising God. And yet, I'm going to sing of the Lord's mighty strength and power despite the things that I'm facing. I'm going to sing joyfully of his loving kindness. Worship is not a feeling, but it's a choice. That even though we go through the darkest seasons of our life, we can still sing joyfully of the loving kindness and the strength and the refuge that we find in Jesus. Some in this room, you may have heard the story before, but there's a story of a family that in 1870, they experienced their fair share of hardship. See, in 1870, they lost their only son. The following year, a massive fire to their home ruined them financially. 2 years later, the husband received a message from his wife, who had sailed across the sea with their 4 daughters to Europe, where he had planned to meet them later on. The note read, "Saved alone." She and the girls had been in a terrible collision at sea, and their ship had gone down, and all 4 daughters had died. The man, Horatio Spafford, and as he crossed the sea to meet his grieving wife, he wrote the words, "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." How in the world could an individual face such tragedy, hardship, struggle, pen the words, "It is well with my soul," when it's not so well? Because I believe that he understood this reality as well, that even though we may be storm-tossed, angry, discouraged, frustrated, hurt, that it's still possible to sing of God's faithfulness. That for some in this room, that you're sitting here asking, "God, why? God, I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why this is taking place. God, I don't understand how many more times can the car break down? How many more times do I have to face that hospital bill? How many more times do I have to walk through this sickness? God, I don't understand the frustrations. God, I don't understand the why. God, I don't know why this is going out and why that's not happening. God, I don't understand why I'm living in this world. I don't understand what is going on." And yet, we can shift our heart and shift our perspective and say, "God, I don't know why. I don't know why. But I'm going to keep trusting you. Because I'm going to trust in the fact that you are still faithful. God, I'm going to still trust in the fact that you are good and that you do good. God, I don't understand why this is breaking down, but I know that you're not falling apart. God, I understand that you hold the world in your hands, and because I am in the world, you're holding me in your hands. God, I don't understand why this is taking place, but I'm going to worship you nonetheless. I'm going to come into Sunday morning, and it might be a heartfelt, been through hell, hallelujah, but I'm still going to raise my hands, and I'm still going to declare he is faithful, he is strong, he is my place of refuge, he is my hope, he is my shield, he is my confidence. It's not in my circumstances, it's not even when things are going great. No, it's great because he is great. It's preaching to ourselves that God is faithful to his word, faithful to his character. We're going to anchor our calling to Jesus, and then we're going to sing in the midnight hour. It's like what Levi Lusko says in his book, "Blessed are the spiraling." He says, when you sing in the pit of despair, there can be a breakthrough in what is trying to break you. That when you sing in the pit of despair, there can be a breakthrough in what's trying to break you. Look at it in Acts 16. Suddenly, there was a massive earthquake, and the prison was shaken to its foundations. All the doors immediately flew open, and the chains of every prisoner fell off. The jailer woke up to see the prison doors wide open, and he assumed the prisoners had escaped, so he drew his sword to kill himself. Why is that? Because he understood those that were over him, that if he allowed the prisoners to escape, it was his life to be had. And it was not going to be a quick death. It was going to be a slow, painful, torturous death. And so he thought, here in this moment, my life is done. It's ruined. There's no way. I'm not going to go through that pain. I'm just going to end it now. So he planned to kill himself. But Paul shouted to him, "Stop. Don't kill yourself. We are all here." And the jailer called for the lights and ran to the dungeon and fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. And then he brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Can I suggest, for Paul and Silas, the reason why they did not run is because they were more committed to their calling than their comfort. See, they understood the assignment. They understood that they were called for a greater purpose. They understood that God had planned an amazing impact in them and through them as they shared the gospel message with those that would be asking, "What must I do to be saved?" Here you have Paul and Silas, they themselves having been in the dungeon suffering, and yet it did not take their eyes off the fact that there are others in front of them that were also suffering hardship and hurt and grief. And it was in these moments that they understood that this was just an opportunity disguised as an interruption. See, when a person is more committed to their calling than their comfort, they focus on the one thing that matters most: eternity. Heaven on my mind. See, when a person is focused on eternity, they no longer see church as an optional event, but a priority to be a part of. Knowing that it's in God's presence that things change. Knowing that it's in community that strength is found. Knowing that it's in our spiritual growth that's going to help us stay focused on the one thing, the main thing. They see themselves that God has gifted them to serve others, and so they jump on a serve team knowing that God has wired them to making a difference. They honor the Lord with their finances by giving Him their first fruits and their best fruits, not their leftovers. Because they understand that when you honor God with your first and your best, you receive His best. They have heaven on their mind Monday through Saturday to live, love, and look more like Jesus, understanding that it's in that form of living that you're going to introduce others to a loving God. A person that's more committed to their calling, when the setbacks hit, they don't run from or ahead of God, but rather they trust Him, they wait on Him, and they keep His ways, and He causes them to inherit the lands. The reality is, a person that is committed to their calling above their comforts, they understand they don't have to have everything figured out before they praise. They just have to trust in the one that does. For some in this room, I don't know all the stories. I don't know all the battles you're facing. There's some, I do know your stories. And I know the struggles that you're going through. I know the pains, I know the grief, I know the hardships, I know the things that are trying to suffocate out the life and the breath that God has placed inside of you. And you're here this morning, if we were to sit across the table having a cup of coffee, and if you tell me your story, you would say, Darian, I feel like I'm just in this inner dungeon and I don't see another way out. Can I encourage you this morning? God sees you. He's with you. And when we sing in the midnight hour, when we sing in spite of our circumstances, when we recalibrate our emotions and our mind and our heart, when we recalibrate and see, you know what, this is not a curse, but maybe it's just a new way to trusting God in a new way and seeing His victory on the other side. When Paul and Silas, when they started declaring the promises of who God is and what He can do, what happened? The foundations were shaken and the chains were set free. You want victory? You want healing? You want the things to God to show up? It starts with our praise. It starts with praying. It starts with lifting our hands. It's saying, you know what? Yes, this is reality. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not being passive, but I'm going to stay on this truth and this reality that, yes, this is reality, but so is my God. And my God is promise maker, and He's a promise keeper. And if He says that He can do it, then I know He's going to do it. And if He says that He's with me, I can know that He's with me. If it says that He's my refuge, then I know that I can trust Him. If He says that the world is in His hands, then I'm in His hands. And so therefore, I'm going to be at peace, recognizing He's got it under control. The victory belongs to Him. The victory is coming from Him. And so therefore, I'm going to be of confidence in knowing this is not my fight. This is not my battle, but my confidence is the reality that God is with me. He is for me. He is on my side. And so therefore, I'm going to live with this confidence.